Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled down to the earth, and his angels with him. This was written at the end of the 1st century and was included in the canon of the New Testament. The ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, cast down from heaven. What does this mean, and how did we get here? Let's go back to the beginning. The oldest text that mentions the name Satan is from the book of Job. And in this text, Satan is not this divine opposition underworld king that he's later depicted in late antiquity by both Jews and Christians and Muslims, but instead he's more of a district attorney for El Jehovah. And he's talking to El Jehovah about Job and why Job worships him, because he has so much wealth, and if you take away his wealth, then he won't worship you. And anyways, long story short, this old depiction of Satan is not at all in line with the Satan that we just heard from in Revelation. In fact, the serpent in the garden is never mentioned as being the same thing as Satan. If the serpent in the garden was cast out of Eden along with Adam and Eve, then there's no way he can possibly be in the later scene for Job, which makes no sense. So how do we get from Satan as some district attorney character who's aligning himself with the sons of God, and the serpent character who is cast out of paradise with Adam and Eve, and how do we get from those to being two separate things to this depiction of a war breaking out where the great dragon, ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, is cast down? Where is Lucifer in all of this? Ancient serpent. The Egyptian Book of the Dead dates back to the 2nd millennium BCE, before the collapse of the Bronze Age. There is a text titled "The Chapter of the Making of the Transformation into the Serpent Seta." The Chancellor-in-Chief, Nu, triumphant, says, "I am the serpent Seta, whose years are many. I die, and I am born again each day. I am the serpent Seta, which dwelleth in the uttermost parts of the earth. I die, and I am born again, and I renew myself, and I grow young each day." You might actually be surprised to discover that this is not the oldest for the image of the serpent to be connected with rebirth, immortality, healing. This is an idea that traces itself back to the Bronze Age Black Sea region. The Pelasgians inhabit the world of Greece, Rome, Northern Africa after the collapse of the Bronze Age. These myths are retold in the stories of Medea. The dracones of Medea were a pair of serpents which drew the flying chariot of the witch Medea. She summoned them to carry her away from Corinth following the murder of King Creon, his daughter Glauce, and her children by Jason. Diodorus of Sicily says that she was posing as a priest of Artemis. Artemis has the title Luciferia. She's also the brother of Apollo, who is the brilliant one, the light bringer, and god of music, poetry, beauty, prophecy. Diodorus says, she, Medea, posing as a priestess of Artemis, declared to King Pelias that Artemis, riding through the air upon a chariot drawn by dracones, had flown in the air over many parts of the inhabited earth, and had chosen the realm of the most pious king in all the world for the establishment of her own worship and for honors, which she be forever and ever. By means of certain drugs, Medea caused shapes of dracones to appear, which she declared had brought the goddess through the air from the Hyperboreans to make her stay with Pelias. Hyperboreans are a mythical race of people from the land of Scythia. This signifies this is an ancient myth brought to the Greeks from previous time. You also have the god Set, an Egyptian deity, identified with Typhon. He is the god of deserts, storms, disorder, violence, and foreigners. Set originally had a positive role where he accompanies Ra on his bark to repel Apep, the serpent of chaos. However, during an intermediate dynasty, Set's role would drastically change as he became identified with the storm god Typhon. He became the devil. Which brings us to Angramanu, another Middle Eastern deity, also known as Ahriman, who is called the devil as well. He is seen as the evil god in the cosmology of Zoroastrianism. He is just as powerful as the good god of light, Ahura Mazda. In the Zend-Avesta, Zoroaster is traveling through the desert. Once again, Set in the desert. But Angramanu rushes up on him, and Angramanu asks Zoroaster to give up the worship of Ahura Mazda and to worship him, and that if he worships him, he will be given all the boons of the world, the great boon to rule all the nations. Zoroaster declines and begins to chant in honor of Ahura Mazda, and Angramanu is banished by these chants. The story seems very familiar to the Gospel of Matthew, when Jesus is in the desert and is tempted by the devil in the wilderness. Zoroastrianism brings this divide in the world of mythology between good gods and bad gods, the devil and the god. This divide is seen all throughout the world. In Hinduism, you have the devas and the asuras. In Greek mythology, you have Olympians and Titans, which brings us to Saturn. These ideas go back to the Sumerians, with Enlil and Enki. Enlil, who wants to flood the world, he's tired of human beings, is betrayed by Enki, who rather tells humans how to survive the wrath of Enlil. This story is reflected in both Noah's Ark, but also Deucalion being told by Prometheus to build an ark because Zeus is going to flood the world.